Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the European Marketing Confederation webinar. Today, we will be presenting and discussing the European Marketing Agenda for 2021, the results and the findings, with a number of distinguished guests. My name is Jonathan Deacon. I'm Professor of Marketing Innovation at the University of South Wales, where my portfolio also includes business engagement. I'm a past chair, trustee, and board member of the Chartered Institute of Marketing and a vice chair of the European Marketing Confederation. Today, however, I will be acting as moderator for our webcast. And I'd just like to inform you that today's webcast will indeed be recorded, and we hope to post up in very short order a recording of the webcast. Now, we would like to encourage you to post questions and comments throughout the event by using the chat function, which should appear on the right-hand side of your screen. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome attendees from across Europe to the webinar today, and I sincerely hope that you will find this both informative and indeed thought-provoking. As I know that our speakers have got some really interesting and insightful comments and views to share with you. First of all, however, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about the EMC. Sandra, can we have the next slide? So the European Marketing Confederation, in a nutshell, is this. We are a strong peer-to-peer network of like-minded associations. We share knowledge and we share experience for the benefit of our profession, both as individual marketers and the marketing profession more generally throughout Europe. We believe that high standards and professional integrity are absolutely key to the success of the marketing profession throughout Europe. So we develop, we set, and we maintain standards within the industry, within the marketing industry. And we think that's a huge and vital part of what we do. Next slide, please, Sandra. So our agenda for today, next slide, looks a bit like this. You've had my opening remarks. Very shortly, I will turn to our chairman, Ralph Strauss, who will take us through the Agenda 2021. Then we'll be taking a look at individual countries and representatives from those countries giving their perspectives on the challenges and the COVID pre and post-19 implications, I guess. I'll then ask our distinguished guests to join me for a round table if we have some time to discuss some of the differences, the ways that we might wish to take marketing forward and marketing strategy forward in 2021, and the lessons learned that we perhaps could all learn from our guests. We'll then round it all up and give you some further information if you wish to contact any of us here at the EMC. Next slide, please, Sandra. So here's a view of our guests. Very shortly, as I said, I will introduce Ralph Strauss. He is president of the German Marketing Association, the DMV, chairman of the board of the European Marketing Confederation, and author of the European Marketing Agenda 2021. We will also hear from Freddie Hospitalis, who is global head of marketing, ERM Sustainability Consultancy from the United Kingdom. We will hear from Christina Majikita, who is the CMO Baltics region IKEA Group. We will hear from Christoph Eisinger, who is managing director of Ski Amadee in Austria. We will further hear from Uli Klenke, who is Chief Brand Officer of Deutsche Telekom in Germany. Petra Šardiš, Marketing Director, SBU Savory Spreads at Atlantic Grupa Slovenia. And from Irwin Aikma, who is the CMO of Nordoff in the Netherlands. So a packed agenda, and I think without further ado, we'll move on. Sandra? Yeah. And I will hand you over to my great friend and EMC colleague, Dr. Ralf Strauss. Ralf.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for the introduction. I will keep it very short and crisp. I'm just trying to give you some sort of overview about the European Marketing Agenda 2021. You will anyway get the complete agenda with your national marketing associations. It's a full study of more than 50 pages. So just touch base with those if you want to have a full look and what's it all about in marketing in 2021 across Europe. So getting started, I have three topics for you. Topic number one, Sandra, is what is the effect of COVID-19 across Europe? So we find across the different European countries, we find 2 or 3 different angles. Number one is COVID-19, the pandemic has been more or less a boost in digitalization and implementation of digital marketing. So everybody is moving into digital marketing and looking into marketing operations, as well as hand in hand with that, also looking into how to best optimize marketing spendings. So that's one area. The other area certainly is a reduction in marketing spendings, as well as a reallocation of fundings. So the 2 topics go pretty much hand in hand across Europe. While Germany is stronger in digitalization and marketing operations, other countries, and we're going to have a look into that, like Slovenia, Lithuania, or the UK, focus more on budget reallocation or all the budget cuts. The interesting part from my perspective is more or less KPI frameworks, marketing spend optimization, all to get some sort of tailwind with the corona pandemic. So in terms of saying, how do I measure and control my spendings across the board and where to best allocate my fundings? Interesting, from my perspective, we had a long discussion on training and we need to educate our people on digitalization and stuff like that. Even I thought now with the pandemic, even companies would focus more on training and education of their staff, which is not the case. So still we leave the organization pretty much as it is without any further training and education. Sandra, if you look for the focus areas, so as I said before, pretty much digital marketing is on the top-notch places across the different countries. If you look for Austria, for example, if you look for Lithuania, Slovenia, or Switzerland, it's all about digital marketing, the way into data-driven marketing. There are probably 2 or 3 exemptions of that. Number one is Germany, focusing more on CRM databases management, marketing spend optimization, so more CRM as a place to be in Germany. Other countries like Lithuania focusing more on brand strategy and management. Some of the discussions we have had so far is that people come back and say, well, in Lithuania, we've been focusing over many years on data-driven marketing and digitalization. Now we need to counterbalance it with some sort of more focus having on brand strategy and brand management. Also, Slovenia still looking and statistically significant into content marketing, content optimization. So all these countries have different focus areas for 2021, but all over digital marketing, as well as how to make it work, is top notch. And the major question is always, how do I get data together, data points, and how do I find the right skill set? Which brings us to the challenges and barriers. Sandra? And the challenges is across the board, across all the countries, is how do I get marketing tech know-how to the table? So basically bridging the gap between the business area and IT or digital. Number 2, how do I get data to the table? It means consolidating and aggregating data points and then putting analytics on top of that, based pretty often on existing systems. And last but not the least, how do I make cross-functional teamwork really work? We've been discussing over the last, most probably centuries, about cross-functional teamwork. Marketing, sales, IT, controlling, and now the pressure gets more and more in terms of making those pieces all the work. So the major challenges this year is around pretty much focused on organization and really making the best use of existing technologies and data. Sandra? Again, as we had before, there are different challenges across Europe. While Austria, for example, is looking for recruiting of employees with relevant experience, Lithuania Slovenia and other countries, or also Netherlands on place number 2. It's all about a uniform, consistent customer experience across all touch points. To be precise on that, it does not mean to have the best customer experience always and ever across every touch point, but it's more or less to say how to find the best solution for a client if he or she is looking for a certain problem. So it's not always looking for the best, but it's more looking for the best and consistent experience across all touch points. This has a lot to do all following the interviews with people, change management. It has something to do with processes, amending processes, as well as last but not least also how to find the best technology to be implemented. So as we see here, countries have different focus areas, sometimes slightly different, sometimes having bigger differences, but it's all going in the same direction to say, now we need to implement data-driven marketing. In one of the interviews, somebody said, well, listen, Ralph, for the last 15, 16, 17 years, we've been doing in marketing everything to avoid CRM. And now the backlog in topics in terms of making digitalization work is coming closer and closer. And now we need to speed up. And COVID has been an accelerator for that, as well as 2021 and 2022. We really need to find ways to get it into implementation. Sandra. So that's it. Passing it back to Jonathan.
Thank you, Ralph. A really difficult job that you've just had there to distill some of the depth of response, data analysis, and so on that we have in the report. So I would absolutely encourage everyone online today to get access to our Agenda 2021 and read it in detail. But thank you, Ralph, for a distillation so far. Let's hear then some points from around Europe from our guests to look at a little bit more detail into specific country issues. But I'm cognizant, of course, that our guests are international in their viewpoints and their flavors, and I'm sure they will bring a wider perspective too, to further our insight into what agenda we will all be looking at for our marketing strategies in 2021. So I call upon Uli Klenke from Germany to kick us off. He is Chief Brand Officer at Deutsche Telekom. Uli.
Hello, everybody. So greetings from Bonn in Germany. Unfortunately, it's next German coming in now. But you know, it's like in the Eurovision Song Contest, at the end, the German always lose and Lithuania wins. So I hope it will be same today. However, good to talk to you today. I prepared something which gives you a little bit about my personal perspective and what's happening in the marketing business here in Germany. And I prepared some, like, let's say 6 topics, 3 watch outs and 3 opportunities, and maybe you share them or not, and we can discuss later on. So the first thing is what I'm experiencing right now is what I call pitch madness. So it's many advertising clients in Germany who call for agency pitches, and you feel it in the marketplace, and especially as a huge advertiser. You got the feeling that all ad and media and creative agencies you're working together with are always in a hustle, like pitching and fighting for their own survival in the market. So there's some nice examples here in Germany where about 30 agencies were pitching for German television, and we're all involved in that for half a year. So when McDonald's was doing the same thing, so it was like 10 agencies doing that for 4 or 5 months, really engaged with it, and you feel it that there's not enough creative power in the market anymore, because you know the creatives are sitting at home as well, like we do, and they got all their homeschooling going on and all their own experiences. So my impression is that we have not enough creative capacity to really run our business. On the other hand, you see that it's not like brilliant campaigns out. This might be due to the reason that production is quite difficult right now. So we are going to Kiev next week. I know we're talking about, but it's all difficult, to like getting good productions in the COVID area. So this is something where I see that we don't have like the leg room and not the abilities in the marketplace to really convince our clients and customers and really approach the market the way we are used to, or we've been doing it in the past. Next slide, please. So the lockdown media behavior is something which is really strange as well, because people are at home, and it was the rise of the old giant of TV, of linear TV. Was again, like everybody has. We are in a screen world. You wake up in the morning, you got a little screen in your hand with a mobile phone. You change to the bigger screen, which is like the laptop or your computer, and then in the evening you turn to the biggest one, like the TV, and next day it will be the same all over again. So, and this is what we do see as marketing people, that it's really, well, on the one hand side, it's quite easy to really reach your clients and customers or prospects. On the other hand, it's well, output needs input, so it's always the same. There's not so much live things going on, well, except for football and the news in Germany. So where is that inspiration coming from? And it's going to be very interesting what's happening when the lockdown will set us all apart, well, all free again in the sort of new normal life or whatever. It will be very, very interesting what's happening media-wise, because the mobile advertising is quite low right now, so it will experience a huge push, and we have some difficult and new situation. Talking about, next slide, please. Talking about the social divide, this is something what we see in the marketplaces, like the poor getting poorer, rich getting richer, and it's this is something which will be crucial for the new normal and for the next year, especially for personal spendings and consumption of in the private sector. Very, very relevant, and we see it in most of the European countries we are in. So this is something I think brands and marketeers have to think about, how they can help and step aside, or they can help people who are experiencing negative life situations, and maybe lead their brands towards the direction to help them. So I think this is something where we can really, well, where is a chance for brands to make a difference in the marketplace. Next slide, please. Now I'm talking about opportunities. So all is digital now. Nobody knows how, like people react in the future. So will they stay in that all digital mode, or will the old analog habits come again? But my personal impression is that well, we changed a lot for the better. So there's a lot more things like making your life or our lives more convenient. And we as Deutsche Telekom, well, we profit from that, of course. Well, but it's not just a B2C field. I think this is very interesting in B2B as well. And as long as we have, like most of the states, they are intensively helping the corporations in the societies to have a jump start into the new normal. And I think this is something we as marketeers can have a look at and maybe profit from it. Next slide, please. Here, well, I got the chart talking especially about this. I think IoT is something which is really, well, had a huge growth, and we saw a jump start in many cases. And especially, well, 5G gives new opportunities in B2B all over Europe in many markets, where we can all profit from that, given real-time information, or well, having a step into the Internet of Things, which will be one of the leading and very, very important things we have to watch in the next years. Next slide, please. And this is, I think, the most important one for us as leaders in the marketing field. My team and I, we decided to come out of the pandemic as better people. So that was something we were really, intensively working together on. Like, we changed our way of how we treat each other, how we interact with each other, the tools we are using, the way how we eat, the way how we think, and we tried to give ourselves well, sort of like a social response from time to time. And we did something good as well. So in Christmas time, we've been collecting money for a children's home here in the Bonn area and so on. So what we did was we tried to get together or get together through the pandemic and come out as better people. That means be better as so-called social animals, and like the way we are treating each other in a group of people we are. So I think this is something we should really aim at, to get out of this better than before, to define something which is like a real new normal, which is a better normal for the sake of the society, being positive about the new beginnings which lie ahead of us. So this is my thoughts coming from Germany, and maybe we can discuss the one or the other point later on in the discussion. I'm looking forward to. Thank you.
Uli, thank you so much. Some really interesting points already being raised. I think your point about creative capability is absolutely on point for me, and I hope that we can discuss those things further in our round table. Somebody said to me the other day that if you thought COVID-19 was going to have a big impact, then climate change and climate warming is going to be huge. And I think it would be good then to go across to my friend Freddie Hospitalis, who is Global Head of Marketing at ERM. ERM are a sustainability consultancy based in the UK. Freddie. Come in, Freddie. Can't hear you.
Is that better?
That's good. Hear you now. Good man.
Thank you. Just a quick introduction to ERM. We are the biggest sustainability consultancy in the world. We get involved in everything from climate risk, as Jonathan's mentioned, to sustainable sourcing for FMCG type companies, to health and safety for everyone from oil and gas and mining companies to some retailers as well these days. I just want to touch on 4 points that I see as quite important in my agenda, in the marketing agenda, which are based around sustainability. The first one of those is coming out of the pandemic. Now, we've touched on that already, but I see this as either being very fast or very slow. But I think there are probably 3 points that are quite important for, depending on the industry you're in. In that regard, I think the government stimulus packages and how that impacts on various industries and various companies will be very, very important, particularly on capital projects for those people involved in that side of things. I think for a lot of people involved in consumer type industries, every analyst that we speak to is saying that there's going to be a boom in consumer spending by the end of the year, and how, as marketers, we are preparing for that. A simple example of that was yesterday in the UK government announced that there's the roadmap to lockdowns, and there was yesterday evening and this morning there was such a demand for people booking holidays as they're coming out of the lockdown. It pretty well crashed for travel companies that we're working with in terms of their servers. That's the kind of thing that we need to be, as marketers, preparing for. The third thing in this coming out of the pandemic, I think, is quite important, is this kind of change in work habits that we're going to see. Obviously, people aren't going to be working in the offices as much, so we're going to require smaller office space. And I think when and how you buy things will be different. So the resilience companies have, and this whole point about building back better, you've heard about already, is going to be important. The second point is sustainability challenges, regardless of industry, that I think marketing has a right to own in a lot of ways, and at least communicate to customers. I think the first point there is about the transition to a low carbon economy, and more broadly, an organization's environmental stewardship. Again, looking at supply chain and human rights and those kinds of issues, particularly slave labor, which isn't mentioned often, but if I told you for every person on here, 1 in every 3 people on this call is wearing something involving slave labor, it's quite, and considering 75% of slave labor is for people under the age of 12, that's quite a sobering thought. My last point here is about demand, actually, and marketing people having a responsibility about demand. Now, I've got 2 examples here. The first one involves data and data centers. Now, most of you might know or might not know that when you send an email or a text through a mobile app or whatever else it is, it goes through a data center. Those data centers need power and to be cooled or to run. Now, data centers use about 3% of the world's power, hence its carbon. So there's actually more carbon generated, and okay, you can offset it, more carbon generated through data centers than basically every plane flying in the air for a year. Most people don't realize that every single text, every single email involves that. One example of that is that every Google search that people do uses about power for a light bulb, a 60-watt light bulb, for about 11 seconds. Every single Google search. I can't tell you how many billions of Google searches there are a year. But anyway, that's an area around sustainability challenges of all the things you do that need to be done. One other thought on this is about the sustainability debate itself for organizations. It used to be about CSR and being a good corporate citizen. That's now evolved to things around carbon footprinting and understanding your impact on the environment. And I would argue now that that's even evolving even more now that investors and capital markets are getting involved and interested in sustainability. It's become not just a board level issue, but a CEO C-suite risk. Recently, a CEO of a mining company got sacked because basically their ESG, which is the environmental, social, and governance issues, weren't up to scratch. And I think marketing has a right to play in that. My last point here on all of this is some associated marketing thoughts. I know we've talked about digital quite a lot already in the first 3 points, but I think the automation of marketing process is going to be key. But within that, I think how people behave online. We've looked at a lot of social media and that side of things, but I think there's a degree of what I term digital morality of how organizations behave online as everyone moves towards more digital activity is important. And I think my very last point is, how do marketing people, given all these changes in sustainability in terms of how organizations are going to change coming out of the pandemic, how can marketing people, and this is probably more a question than anything else, be valued more highly in an organization than they are currently in a lot of organizations? I think we have an opportunity by some of the things I've talked about to take a greater role in how that an organization can be more valued. I think that's really it for now, given we've got such a short time, but happy to talk about questions afterwards.
Okay, thank you, Freddie. Viewers should know that I've known Freddie for many years, and he and I sat on the board of the Chartered Institute of Marketing together for several years. And I have to say, conversations with Freddie have always been both profound and thought-provoking, and in some ways has nudged me to change some of my habits. So it's good to hear your thoughts there, Freddie, on post C19, COVID-19, especially when we're talking about the future of work. Let's hope we can turn to more of a discussion around that in the round table in a short while. Next, however, without needing to get on an aeroplane, we're going to fly to Slovenia, and we are going to hear from Petra Šardiš. And Petra, to remind you, is Marketing Director at SBU Savory Spreads at Atlantic Grupa. Petra.
Hi, thank you, Jonathan, and hello to everybody. Allow me to spend a minute explaining who we are and where we come from. So if you could just switch to the next slide, please. We are Atlantic Grupa, which is the leading regional manufacturer and distributor of the FMCG brands. When we say regional, I'm talking about beautiful countries of Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, and North Macedonia. We have about 700 million euros in revenues in 2019, over 5,000 employees. We have companies in 8 countries, and we sell our products in over 40 markets across the world. What you see in the middle is the picture of the brands that we produce, so our own brands, and on the far right side are the brands that we distribute. So we have our own branded business, and then we distribute world-renowned brands. Next, please. I will focus my talk on our most international and the largest brand that we have, which is Argeta, which is a pate brand, and it's a #1 meat pate in Europe, just to give you a little bit of a reference. So maybe go to the next slide. I will reminisce a little bit about 2020, but all is still valid today. So the things we've done in 2020 are still on the agenda today. This is a look of downtown Ljubljana, so main square in Ljubljana in the middle of March, which means I know you're familiar with this picture. I'm pretty sure all your cities looked like that when the pandemic started. What that meant for us was that basically everything changed overnight. It meant that consumers from one day to another were completely different. We were shopping in a different way. We were consuming food in a different way. Where we were consuming food was completely different. Our sentiment was completely different. On the other hand side, our business world was completely different. Most of our suppliers come from Italy, and we know what happened to Italy in the first wave. So we had no time to sit and wait what was going to happen because we are marketing. And that meant that we had to look at the situation differently. Next slide, please. Oh, I think you skipped one, but it's okay. So basically what we wanted to see was, is there a chance in the crisis? Is a crisis an opportunity for us? So how can we go through this? And the good thing is that when you're a consistent company and you build your marketing throughout the years, you don't start from zero. So what you see here on the left is that we always have had an extreme consumer focus, which of course helped us immensely to go forward in the whole year of 2020. Our organization is working on having as little silos as possible. We really have the right mindset. This is one thing that Uli was talking about, how this team transformation was very important. And of course, we had a strong brand. And because we knew what the sentiment of the consumers are, we set some basic rules. One of them was that we will have no opportunism, meaning that we will not use the situation in any unfair way. So we stopped, let's say, all the price increases and everything. So we need to be here in a sustainable long-term way. And we asked each other with each and every activity, how can we be relevant to the consumers? What can we deliver? What is relevant today? And it adds value. So there were a few pillars that we built our whole strategy on that became even more important, but we already had them in place. So if you go forward, we were really basing everything on these pillars. So technology, one thing we did was our usual R&D process before we come to the market is about 2 years. We've done pretty much a few products last year that took us 3 months, which if you work in FMCG, you know that's quite a miracle. Sustainability became even more amplified through all of our efforts. One thing that was at the core of our thinking was the whole local approach. But none of that could have been done without an extreme agility of the team and the whole company. And we really were proving in every possible way that we can walk the talk. On the next slide, maybe just one example, because we could from one day to another throw out all the market researches. So if we did a research in January, it was no longer valid in March. Consumer sentiment was completely different. But then we did weekly pulse researches to really follow and monitor the situation, as we are really a fast-moving industry. And what we've seen is that more than ever, our markets, we need positive news. That local was never as important as it was in the times of pandemic. That we are really, really divided. I think Uli was mentioning the social divide, but really one thing that unites us or connects us is this positive topics. And more than ever, we feel for our communities. And this is just one example. And what you see on the next slide is how we did it. So on most of our markets in the region where we are, of course, a very strong #1, we have done a lot of local initiatives really helping and supporting, be it small businesses that were actually going to go out of business, or we had things set up, and what you see on the right-hand side, we have a whole digital platform in place for the kids, and we activated it, we upgraded it, because kids were schooled at home. They weren't allowed to leave the house, and we have a lot of educational content that they could play with. So everything was united under the one big slogan, spread good. And we really, of course, delivered products to the market, but we did it in a local, sustainable, and in a really good way. I can't disclose our financial results, but I can tell you that our growth last year was double digit. So we came out of this crisis with all the efforts, also with really, really positive results. You can move on. Going forward, then I could say that we have 4 very strong pillars that are extremely important for us. One, what we've seen never as much as we did last year, that what your brand purpose is, and if you really manage to deliver, is so, so important. So of course, the whole purpose of the brands that we have is going to be even more significant in the future. One thing that also research showed in some way or the other is that the whole people and culture are going to be of the key importance. What is also always mentioned is the whole data. So the consumer data in ever-changing environment that actually supports the agility which you have to have in order to move forward and move fast. And really on the last slide, very, I will say, industry specific. You can move forward, thank you. What are our key focus areas, taking everything from 2020, all the learnings, all the successes, is really working on stability and really working on market and consumer relevance in our category, where we need to improve the image, and of course, increase the value. We all know what we are in business for. And of course, the whole brand penetration with the help of increasing brand relevance. So these are some of the key pillars for us and for our industry. And this would be it, as the time is limited, and I will be more than happy to answer some questions later. Thank you very much.
Petra, thank you so much. Just to bring our viewers in, our speakers today are under absolutely strict orders from the moderator to keep to 10 minutes. And so far, everybody has been a little under, which gives us a little bit more time for discussion in a few moments' time, which would be absolutely fantastic. Just picking up on a few things that you mentioned there, which maybe people would like to, viewers would like to ask some questions around, you know, that whole agenda of agility, the pace of change, and the fact that being a good corporate citizen has really been so important in the last year. But I'm curious, how do we move from supporting our communities to actually getting back to some form of profitable business? That's going to be an interesting one for us all to tackle, I suspect. Very good. Where are we going to go next? Let's go to Christina Majikita. Christina is CMO Baltics region for IKEA Group. Christina.
Thank you. So I will do the Lithuania overview. So I will try, to highlight where we are as a country and also give some examples from IKEA business. I'm marketing manager for IKEA Baltics, so covering not only Lithuania, but also Latvia and Estonia. So I'll give like more variety of things we've been in past 6 or 9 months. Next slide, please. So first of all, let's dig deeper into the top 3 effects, what had happened in Lithuania and what had an impact on our business. So spending and efficiency are like 2 magic words we've been like talking around all the time. So budget reduction, I know that like majority of businesses made cuts on their like media spends, on creative spends, and the travel business is closed. The fashion business cannot like operate at the fullest. So brand managers and marketing managers were doing very difficult decisions to cut the budgets. At IKEA, we didn't do any budget cuts due to the fact that we've been like opening up our e-business, and we wanted to be known as also service provider for the market. So also relocation of spending, like moving from outdoor radio into the digital platforms was one of the key moves during the last period. And also reorganization of the processes. We used to work in more like physical environment rather than digital, and like majority of the business were forced to change their direction from physical into the digital and also reorganize their processes. And at IKEA, we now like recruiting more and more digital team members so that we would be able, to keep the pace and be able to fulfill our promises for our customers. Next, please. So top 3 marketing issues. So everybody is aware that in Lithuania, next, please. Can you move? Yeah. So we've been known as a pioneers in e-services. So we've developed as a country e-medicine, e-banking, and e-business. So majority of our citizens can, make an appointment virtually and can, meet the doctor. We've been doing e-banking for many years already. And if you want to start business in Lithuania, you don't need to go to any like physical place. You can, place your application virtually, and you will be, granted with the company VAT number, and you can start business without, leaving your office or your apartment. Next, please. So, and also regarding issues, we've been working with digital marketing in general for the latest period, and we know that the digital marketing makes a big difference in these pandemic times. And majority of our budgets were spent to innovate and make our processes more digitalized and more automated than ever before. Of course, brand strategy is the topic which Rolf mentioned during his introduction, that in Lithuania, we've been focused more on promotions rather than the brand. And this is a perfect opportunity for many brands to, stand for the brand position, not a brand position, which is focused only discounting and making low price offers. So this is the time when all the brands are, like majority of the brands are reviewing their strategies, and they're like paying more and more attention what and why their brands exist in the market. And of course, last point is innovation and product development. Lithuanians are known very much for infrastructure, which is very good for fintech companies, and many fintech organizations launching their business in Lithuania. So we are known as a nation because of those innovations and product developments. At IKEA, we're also very much focusing on various product developments on IT side. And we want this experience which we could provide for the customers in the physical, shopping environment, also with the digital experiences. And we are like moving in a giant steps to invent and provide for our customers new solutions, which could make their digital shopping experience better than ever before. Next, please. So as I mentioned that we've been good at innovation and digitalization, but we still lack focus as a nation on data analytics, on employer branding and brand strategy itself. And I would cover later on the employer branding, like focus later on from IKEA's example. Next one. And then top 3 challenges for Lithuanian marketing managers. Next, please. So very much important that customers would have consistent experience across all touch points. We started with the physical only and then moved slightly into the digital environment, but together with the pandemics, we find ourselves totally in unknown situation where physical channels are closed and you can, provide full brand experience and full shopping experience only on digital channels. And we want to establish this good experience very soon, that the customers will be able to get the best of their shopping experience. Doesn't matter in which shopping touch point they shop. So this is like priority on customer centricity. Also, that cooperation with other departments such as IT is vital these days, because majority of developments and customer experience tools are created by IT, and IT is very often is the bottleneck to keep the pace and to stimulate the customer experience development. So this is quite a challenge. I also for IKEA, we are like running at the moment like 100 IT projects, and some of those have higher or lower priority. But when we make decision which project should be on the top priority, we also look if the project contributes to the better customer experience. And then if we say so that it's a magnificent move towards better customer experience, then we take a decision to develop this or another project. And of course, consolidation of distributed customer data in order to gain 360 overview of the customer is the third focus point. We know that we are data-driven industry, and we collect data points everywhere, in the stores, physically, online, digitally, also on social media platforms. And we want all this data to be combined in one accessible ecosystem where you can easily access and make the right decision what you need to develop to be really acknowledged as a customer-centric company. Next one. And the last thing I want to mention about IKEA. So at IKEA, we also focus on digitalization. Next priority is data orchestration, because we have like many different touch points all around our business units, and we want to have all the data in one place, and we are working on that. And the third one is data ethics. So today everything is digital, and we want to be known as the ethical company in terms of customer data use. So these are the points I wanted to highlight for you today.
Christina, thank you so much for that insight. Certainly early days of our lockdown here in the UK, I went to our local IKEA store to pick up some bits and pieces, and there were lines of people waiting at the checkout with nothing but office chairs, desks, and bookcases, which was that indication of people wanting to work from home, of course. Here in the UK, it's been a fantastic year for bad weather, and in particular snow. And unfortunately, we have been unable to make it to the mountains to go skiing because of the restrictions. And on that particular flavor, I'd like to turn to hear from Christoph Eisinger, who is the Managing Director of Ski Amadee in Austria, to hear about how the Austrians have been managing through this particular period. And really, Christoph, are we talking about digital skiing? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Actually, it's a big challenge how we could manage this situation. Hello and welcome to an interesting afternoon, I hope, from Ski Amadee. Ski Amadee is located in Salzburg, Austria. And for those who do not ski, and for the ones who might not know Ski Amadee already, Ski Amadee is Austria's greatest and biggest ski destination. We offer 760 kilometers of slopes with one ski pass in 25 different ski resorts. In marketing, we face a widespread portfolio of target markets, and we set marketing activities in more than 10 European markets. So, and you can imagine, like most of the other destinations and enterprises in the tourist industry in Europe, also Irwin was heavily affected by the COVID pandemic situation. Our resorts are locked down since the beginning of the season, actually never opened, and only the ski lifts were allowed to operate for a few locals. So you can imagine this challenging situation. It's really a crisis, but in every crisis, there's also a chance. So we actually thought over and took our time to put major focus on the digital aspects in our marketing strategies and methods to be best prepared for actually the restart after the pandemic phase. So what were the concrete challenges we faced through the pandemic situation when we started to plan this season and the marketing for this season for 2021? Actually, the sales expectations, even in summer, were very poor. And these expectations got worse and worse month by month. And this led, of course, to a major budget cut. We had to work out a very flexible marketing plan and marketing planning. Please know that we host 70% of international guests in various international markets or from various international markets. And we did not know in advance which market would open or would be open for the season and which of them were closed due to the travel barriers, like the quarantine regulations in the different countries. So the problem to solve was actually we were aiming to realize the sales potential in the different markets through campaigns when these markets were open, but we of course had to stop the activities and campaigns at closed markets in order not to burn money. And actually you certainly know that travel regulations were changing continuously from week to week. So we established a stop and go system for the marketing campaigns in the different countries with a very high focus on flexibility and efficiency. Next slide, please. The solution, actually, we thought that, and we still think that we found for these big challenges, was in an accelerated digital transformation in our marketing strategies and activities. And I want to point out two fields in which we worked with much effort. One is in media strategy. We actually changed and switched our media strategy to a very online focused point of view. Mainly, we switched from traditional TV to addressable programmatic TV, of course, with a combination with an omni-channel mix. This brought us more flexibility in the campaign control. We had to adjust and shift from one week to the other because conditions were changing in the markets. We could easier localize and address the skiers. We could come to a better targeting and less scatter loss. And also, which was also possible by digital media, we could actually adjust and adapt the message better to the fast changing markets. The second focus we concentrated on was actually consumer and customer relations. The goal we already followed the last years was enhanced individualization in the marketing mix and more flexible offers to the customers. This year we already prepared in test markets, but this year, although it was not very convenient time, we launched the new Schema de Friends Club. The Friends Club aims to collect data from customers and to actually analyze these data, to connect data from different databases, and to actually form profiles and also to give special promotions, bonus, special products to the customer to reach more individualization. And also this Friends Club we launched this year, and also was the major message in our communication campaigns, helped us to keep the brand actual, tangible, fresh, despite of the Corona situation. We did not have any other messages to communicate because of the lockdown. There were no special packages, promotions, events, or other highlights. So this Schema de Friends Club actually helped us to have to keep the brand Schema de Fresh. Next slide, please. So what did we actually learn out of the current crisis situation? Let me sum up. Also in the future, we will focus more than before on digital online media in communication campaigns. Actually, KPI-driven campaigns allow us to achieve a wider reach and more effective contacts in the target group. Customer relations is a highlight in our strategic portfolio, and we will emphasize on this strategy for the future, which means digitalization of customer touch points and processes and deeper data analysis, which leads to the output that we can better customize products, prices, and the communication for the individual client, and to actually give a better customer experience to them, which also helps us to increase the value in our cash desks. Well, although our efforts did not lead to much business success in this winter 2021, because of the lockdown of our resorts, we will reinforce our resources towards the implemented strategies I mentioned above. And I'm quite convinced that this will lead to a more competitive marketing position for the restart phase by increased efficiency and customization in a marketing mix.
Christoph, thank you for your presentation. I often say to my university students that you know, we all of us remain students of business and students of marketing throughout our careers and throughout our lives. No one knows everything, and there's always something new to learn. And I think part of my learning today, when we go away from today's session and I reflect on it, I think is the fact that how many differing sectors and industries we've heard from today, and we've got one more to come, but that there are similarities, but there are differences as well, and we need to look to those to learn and take forward that learning into the future. Maybe take it across into other industry sectors as well. So finally, at this part of our webcast today, I'm going to call on Irwin Aikma, CMO of Nordoff in the Netherlands. Irwin, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon. I fully agree that the different industries come with different challenges. And Nordoff has quite some challenges, and especially if, all of us, all of a sudden, we all became teachers because most of our kids all of a sudden had homeschooling. And I think, I'm not sure how the rest of Europe is, but at least Nordoff is part of Infinitas Learning, which we also represent in Belgium and Sweden. The ecosystem of those learning platforms were not ready for homeschooling, so to say. So we were in a digital transformation, but normally you have a bit of time to do that. And last year forces us to speed up a lot of processes, but also from a marketing perspective, normally we do the marketing across schools, and schools take their platforms and their materials. And all of a sudden, with homeschooling, we got a lot of questions about cookie settings, about all kind of digital homeschooling challenges we had to face. And interesting enough, it also in the Netherlands made sure that the whole industry came together and said, we need to solve this now. We need to find a way how we can give the schools and teachers free subscriptions, free licenses, because the schools and education has to continue. So even those schools which are laggards and didn't have like licenses, we made sure we gave them access so they could experience and they could move on with their schools. Of course, we're now in the second year. The schools normally started in September. So what are the key challenges we're facing right now? What are the focus areas from Nordoff perspective, given where we are? I think first of all, I think it's funny how we want to connect the CRM databases and manage it properly and focus really on the marketing automation flow. But also because the more the different kind of from primary to secondary and so on move towards digital learning, the more we can actually service teachers in their customer journey and help them how to benefit from digital learning platforms, how to see like dashboards over their kids. What are, if they make digital exercises, what are they struggling? What are they already solving, and what are focus areas? So that's number one by default, because the better we know the journey of all the different teachers and schools, the better we can tap into those journeys during the day and support them with relevant content to help them through. Not even it is for students, but also for teachers, because they're struggling as well. The second is, of course, then the digital marketing. Because normally we're visiting schools and all of a sudden the schools are closed. So we created we hired a physical location, and we created a virtual classroom where like professors from high school could teach in like a fake environment, like webinar sessions, but then really interactive. Because that was actually, Zoom is nice, but the more people are in a Zoom, and I'm not sure if you can see those other tools with kids and when they have homeschooling, not everybody is on mute, or there's always a cat running around or something else happening. It's quite hard to get the focus of students and young kids on education. And I think the digital marketing, COVID raises the bar, because the expectations of our customers are raised because they expect us to deliver. And the same, it comes with like becoming a learning partner. From a marketing perspective, it's more about thought leadership. Now everybody realizes how important education is. And I think also that one of the other challenges is, because COVID is not over, you can see, like, with especially younger kids, some kids are doing okay on homeschooling, but others have a hard time. So it's like the difference between the different teachers. There is like a gap between where should those kids be and where are they really, and how do we close that gap? Because that gap on the knowledge economy need to be closed coming years, because the more and more studies there are, the more the impact on all those kids is clear. And as a supplier of all those materials and platforms, if we feel it as our kind of goal to support teachers and schools to close that gap to the future. And from a marketing perspective, it really means how can we step up the game and do the storytelling correctly? Why would, because it's in the end, if we do this story right, it's creating a preferred supplier advantage instead of like, this is what we can do for you. And of course, it also brings interesting new business model changes, because all of a sudden we started with Studiemeister on higher education, a digital platform, because, well, all those schools are closed, and we can test with gamification. We can test with all kind of different models, subscriptions models or content models, instead of like old school books and blended versions. So those 5 are basically big focus areas. And it covers almost the whole marketing span. So it's quite broad. If you look at what are the challenges we're facing, which is on the next slide. Get rid of the first of all is like, how do you establish the consistency across different touch points, from desktop to tablets to mobile, from all those cookies which are not deleted and you need to delete them, and all those school systems, because some schools, they have like laptops and they store them overnight, they reset them all, so all the and so there's a lot of experience which we don't control, and has a massive impact, because if you move to artificial intelligence, you need to have more data, you need to build on that data, and if the schools don't collect that data locally, how do we as a supplier make use of it? Of course, if you look at the platform environment, it's also a change of mindset. The change from waterfall, so you have like time over the years to make sure like a math method is completely pixel perfect, to like really short-term sprints and agile working for a company who is not used to work in that pace. And so you need to combine them. I think marketing has the role as a bit of like the spider in the web, who needs to make sure that from the voice of the customer, from market research, from customer journey, to make sure that all the other departments are constantly aligned, and make sure that we know exactly what the customer wants and how we can tap into that. And also makes the third one, it's nice to have a lot of data, but it doesn't come with information, and it doesn't come with learning solutions by default. So all of a sudden we are creating departments we never had. All of a sudden we have like data engineers, and we have and lots of them. From the company, which is now 350 people, I think 140 are engineers now. While 2 years ago, it was maybe 40 or 50. So we slowly emerged towards a technology firm which deliver content as well. But content has a different way to get to the customers. It also means for marketing, how do we do the go-to-market? How do we make sure we take the customer in a complete different approach, how education should look like or can look like, not only this year or next year, but the years after. I think that's a nice challenge for the marketeers to solve coming year, and the pandemic pushed us to be faster and be more creative in achieving that. So that's the key take from this industry and the Netherlands point of view.
Irwin, thank you for that. Certainly empathy from my position. as an educator. I think I could see nearly every point that you raised there being of importance to my life and to my activities over the last year. Sandra, do we have another slide, or can we go to round table? So can we go to a group share on that? I think there's an old saying or an adage which has been attributed to Lenin, which said something like, sometimes it takes 20 years to travel 1 year, and sometimes it takes 1 year to travel 20. And I think in the last year we've all traveled, probably a bundle of all the things that we said that we would and should do in our businesses, and suddenly we've had to do them. But more than that, we've had to move forward as well into space that has been very, very difficult for many people, including myself and colleagues, to get their head into and to work out how we use the technology in a sensible way. We maintain a focus on the customer, the client, in our case, the student, perhaps. So a lot of things going on, and I think let's start the discussion, if I may, and ask you to consider. Somebody mentioned earlier on about building back better, and the new normal. I mean, these are statements that we've heard, I think, over and over again, and I think they have been misused, because I'm not quite sure if we truly know what they are about. But I think part of it is about becoming agile and looking to our organizations to become agile, and what that might mean going forward, both for customer focus, and how that relates to us within marketing, and how we manage that expectation perhaps now from our markets. So if I may, I think I'll go to Uli first. Uli, do you want to kick this bit of a conversation off? What does agile mean to you?
Yeah, well, I think we have to be clear about what channel is best for what. So coming together in the office, like if you organize it well, and if you use it for real personal interaction and creative work and debating and coming to a better solution, I think this is clear. But nobody needs to come to the office for taking part in a Zoom call or a WebEx meeting. And I think we have to be very clear on that. And I try to, with my team, we try to fix that. During the pandemic, we've been working on something which is called Kraftwerk Kommunikation. This is like very German. It's Achtung, Achtung. It's a data-driven agile hub. Where we all get together, and we it's like the PR guys, the German marketing, and the brand guys. Well, we're about 350 people together, and to give you a picture, we are below the 10 biggest advertisers and media spenders in Germany, and we invented something which is like an agile platform where we have all the common understanding of, okay, how do we get from reputation to image to product to offer? And how do we align all these topics in an ideal way in terms of, okay, that the customer benefits best? So it's data-driven. We're looking at the same set of KPIs together every day. We get all the streams together, so the paid, the earned, the shared, and the owned. And we discuss what's going on, what's going on, what's good, what's not so very good, and what's happening in the marketplace to react on the sentiment of the people. And I think this is something which is really, especially for huge organizations or for big organizations, is quite complicated, because you are slow, because you got so many walls between the departments. You're not using the same KPIs, you're not using the same tools, you do not have the right understanding. And we try to tackle that and to face that problem, and we came up with that solution now, and we are working on it now on a like in the digital way of working together. And we are so very looking forward to come together in Bonn again and discuss and debate stuff, because we know that we can be so far better when when you have a real debate going on, a real a real discussion. And this is something we prepared over the time, and now we can come out better, which means, okay, we have we have made some progress in the way of how we want to do our communications, do our marketing together, and aligned go into the market for the customer. And this is something we did in the pandemic times now.
Okay, Uli, thanks. Anybody else want to come in on that and make comment? Irwin.
Well, I think the interesting part is if you talk about the new normal, if you look in the past and the behavior of people, I hope that people get more into Freddie's area and realize that the sky is more clean, the rivers are different, that actually the pandemic brought also something good for nature. And the fact that people cannot go out to theaters and they actually start to enjoy nature in a different way, reinvent their own country, the local parks, the local forests. I'm so afraid that the new normal is temporary. And the moment we can just behave like we did before, people will just go to the office, get back to their routines, and we as marketeers feel like, okay, back to what we already know. Instead of like, oh, how can we really transform and make use of this pandemic for the better?
Okay, Irwin, let's bring Freddie in. Freddie, what's your view on can we maintain some of this? You're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Thank you, Owen. I think the word agility is quite useful, but I always use the words about resilience as COVID has shown us, but also about being nimble, and that a degree of speed of change. Now, I talked about this inflection point, or wherever this inflection point is between us being locked down and coming out of lockdown, and then this spend, this notion, and I think I tried to allude to this, is that we as marketers have an opportunity to make it slightly more sustainable in everything we do. I've alluded to some of those things in my comments, but I do think we have an opportunity here. But yeah, the big risk is that everyone's been locked down in one form or another for so long that getting back to a normality takes us back to a normality of driving the car everywhere for 2 miles or doing whatever you do, going back to that normality as opposed to a new normality, whatever that is. I mean, the realities I mentioned at work, that people are going to be working from home probably more, which means less travel, probably good. But in terms of how we understand our customers and their changing needs, as there will be, and use data in a much different way than we've probably been using in the past. I think all those things come into it about being nimble, resilient, and agile.
I think it may come as a surprise to some listeners across Europe this afternoon that here in the UK, sales of bicycles have just gone through the roof. People turning to cycling like they have never done so before, and it's that behaviour. There's some theories of consumer behavior and personal behavior that if you give it long enough, those behaviors become embedded, don't they? And our customers should by now be in that new behavioral pattern. Perhaps we look at our own lives and see if that's the case, I guess. Petra, in the food business, are you seeing not only sustainability but also a kind of almost confirmation of behaviors taking place? Has behavior changed in consumption of the food stuff?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think maybe just to connect myself to the last point that you were making, and I agree with what Freddie and Irwin were saying. I think this is a brilliant opportunity for consumers to get out of this situation with some new values, so I hope we don't go back to the way everything was. I think this is the positive side of the last year, that we can rethink certain ways. Yeah. So I would also hope that the consumer behaviors will also put this on board and carry this forward with some changed behaviors. But yes, the way they eat, consume food, who they do it with, what are they careful about. As I talked in my presentation, local became a lot more important. Sustainability is, of course, tied right into that. So yeah, consumers are getting more educated, and this is part of our job, of course. And I think that the future can bring positive change into this areas. Absolutely.
Okay. I've got some questions coming in on the chat. So let's turn to one of those. First of all, Tanya from Slovenia, thank you for your reference to the bicycles, out of stock in Slovenia as well, it would appear. Just before this all happened, I was in Taiwan actually, working with the government there for a project. And Taiwan just happens to be the world's largest manufacturer of bicycles, and I think they've had a pretty good year in Taiwan, to be honest with you. 7 deaths overall. Let me remind you, 7 deaths. Population of what, 30 million or something, and their industry is going full tilt on making bikes. Okay. Urska, you asked a question. How did the regulation loosen in these pandemic times relevant to your industries? Have they helped you do better? So if we kind of just put that into the round table, regulations, have they loosened up for you? Have they allowed you to be? Anyone want to pick that up?
Well, I think I'll speak about my world in consulting, because it impacts pretty well every industry. I would argue that regulation is increasing in climate risk, and we're starting to see a lot more governments wanting to have better understanding of the climate risks that companies involve. There's a thing called the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, which is becoming mandatory in the UK and in certain other countries around Europe, that listed companies have to go and give a better understanding of their climate risks under different scenarios. So in my world and sustainability world, I think there is a movement from transparency of what you are doing and being a good, responsible organization to actually demonstrating that and actually having regulations do that. So I see my world becoming more regulated than less regulated through COVID.
Anyone else?
I may step in. So IKEA is really well known in sustainability field, and we put bars very high for ourselves. We are a very big producer, and we are looking, for alternative, materials for our supply chain. So we are like reducing usage of wood, like natural wood, and we like very much responsible about forestry. Then we are not reducing use of plastic, and we committed, by 2025 to go to absolute zero, and also reduced uses of polyester. We are like looking to alternative, sources. So we are in regulated business, but as IKEA, we set even higher bars for ourselves. And our commitment is really well known around the region. And regarding the COVID, of course, we cannot operate in the normal way. Our stores are closed in the region, and the only one meeting point for the customer is e-store. So we are looking forward when the governments will open up our businesses. At the moment, we are very much closed.
Christina, thanks. Briefly, Freddie, because we have another question and we are going to run out of time. But just very briefly, because you are pretty much the specialist on this. I know we should have been talking about sustainability, much before COVID, and it's going to be, a big part of our marketing agenda moving forward. What advice would you give to viewers this afternoon about how they should orientate their business to become more sustainably focused?
Oh gosh, how long's a piece of string? that does depend on the industry you're in the market you're in, the number of how you work. Christina talked about sourcing the materials. It's the sourcing material. It's also how you transport those materials. A lot of the work we do is changing distribution lines so that you actually use shipping rather than taking fleets of lorries across the country, across the continent, sorry, because it actually works out your carbon footprint is less. Understanding all those things is quite important. I think that it's looking not just at what you produce and how people buy it, it's looking at your complete supply chain. that feeds that, and then how that transfers through, and using that as an opportunity to sell your products.
So really, do an audit straight away. See where where things are coming from. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. We've got a question. Got a whole number of questions coming in now. Thank you, everyone. As always, when we've got a few minutes left and all the questions come in. I think. Forgive me if I pronounce your name incorrectly, but Polovic, I think. Question for Petra. As you mentioned, you have integrated showing support for local shops and businesses in your advertisements to connect with the community more now than ever. How was that specifically done?
Okay, so there were quite a lot of initiatives, but let me share one with you. So in the first wave of the pandemic, which was spring of 2020, there were, let's say, some fish farms in Slovenia that are producing trout that, because the Horeca business was completely closed, because they were supplying schools which were not open, they were basically going out of business. And as we, of course, make meat and fish pâtés and everything, we bought all of their surplus fish, and within, as I said before, we have a very long R&D process, especially with the regulation in the food industry. We managed to put it on the shelves within 3 months. So we basically bought all their fish. They stayed in business, and we connected with the largest food retailer in Slovenia, and we did this activity together because we both basically gave away all of our profit margin in order to put it on the shelves with the price that people would be able to afford it. And then, yes, absolutely, we communicated it with this sense of local pride, and you're helping the local economy to the consumers. And we did this in 3 of the regional markets where we found local sources. And of course, yes, at the end of the day, it enormously helped the brand. We were very much noticed. We were seen as even more local than before. And we did it also to for some small local suppliers of the Michelin star restaurants, which were also closed, but we didn't want to give the money to the Michelin chefs because everybody has, let's say, an image of them as having loads and loads of money, but what nobody knows is they have small suppliers because they really are sustainable and they look for locally sourced ingredients. So we gave them a lot of donations. They were able to select who they want to give a donation to, and through that we, I hope, solved quite some issues that they will get out of this crisis and be in business again afterwards. So we've done a lot like this. We were kind of always involving the consumers, so they were also able to help. And yes, at the end, it is all done for the benefit of the brand, but CSR and this whole sustainable local approach is at the core of our brand, and it gave us an opportunity to amplify it even further, and we've seen the results.
I think I have certainly personally noticed that there has been a shift to local. I mean, that could be that everybody's working at home, I guess, it's a natural byproduct of local. But in our own village here, I live in Wales. In our own village, we have seen a bakery store open. We've seen a local farmer bring his produce to an empty store in the village, and so on and so forth. And someone's just asked a question online, and I think I'm going to use it as our final question to do an absolute roundtable on. And that is, how do we, we've been talking a lot about 2 things, I think, this afternoon. One has been digital transformation, how we've used digital technology to take us forward. And there's certainly a lot of discussion and information about that in the Agenda 2021 that says that's on the agenda. But also on the agenda is, is the case of being human scale. How do we have that relationship, that much more nuanced and closer relationship to our customers? So around the table, very briefly, we've got less than 2 minutes, so it's probably a one-liner off each of you. How do we become a human-centered organization? Start with you, Uli. Turn your mic on, Uli. Yeah. No, it's gone off now. It's gone off. Okay, we'll go to Irwin while you sort your technology out. How do we become a human-centered organization, Irwin?
I think it's making use of the data in the correct way, in combination with, we touched upon the creativity. I think with creativity you can reach the heart of the people, and with the data you can use the right message. Great, Christina.
So it's a perfect time, to combine data and like human factor into the totality. Not only rely on purely on data and give machines to give the final decision for you, but to be involved all the time. To judge, to make final decisions, and put creativity in the center.
Thank you. Just to warn you all, I used to be in TV and radio, and I hate going overtime. So, Christoph, 1 or 2 words. How do we become a human-centered organization?
Well, in our case, it's not very challenging because we're in tourist business. So actually, the touch to the customer is actually the major benefit we can give. And we, in our marketing strategy, we always focused on the guest, and not only on the guest, but also on locals, on this whole system of the tourism industry, like in the Austrian Alps. The enterprises are spread. We have 7,000 enterprises, so run by an entrepreneur. So it's by each thing. So it's not very difficult to center on the human being, but
you're already human. Cool. Yeah. Uli, to you for a last comment, please.
Well, I think you have to concentrate on your purpose, and your purpose has to be something to do with having a real social goal. So ours is, will not stop until everybody is connected. And when you have a purpose and you put it into the middle of your action or activities, and you implement a culture of people working together very, very harshly to reach that goal, I think this is the very easy solution to that. So the purpose and then the culture to reach it. I think this is it.
Thanks all. Just for me to wrap up, really, I think I can sum up what's happened to business and marketing in the last year by saying that it's changed some things for all businesses, and it's changed everything for some businesses. That's how it struck me. Thank you to our guests, Irwin and Freddie, and Petra and Christina and Christoph and Uli. Thank you for your input and your just bringing a wonderful insight into today's podcast. My apologies to listeners and viewers across Europe. We're a little bit over time, but it would be amiss of me not to thank Sandra for managing all of the technology in the background. And the last words go to our chairman, Dr. Ralf Strauss. Ralf.
Jonathan and speakers, thank you very much for all the insights and all the different perspectives across the different countries. So for all listeners of the webinar, there's a PowerPoint presentation, the full study of 50 pages, as well as the recording of the webinar will be available with your local organizations. If you're interested in certification, senior marketing professional degrees, please touch base with your local national bodies, as well as we are running something like 2,000 events and conferences and webinars across the European Marketing Confederation across Europe. So just touch base. Saying this, stay healthy. I do hope we will have multiple chances over the year to meet in person again. Thanks for the attendance. Thanks for you, Jonathan, for the moderation. And hope next year, if we talk about the European Marketing Agenda 2022, we will have some different topics to be discussed about. And Christoph, for example, in Austria, will have a big smile in his face since all the ski lifts will be opened up again. Thanks and stay tuned. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ralph. It's a little after 3 in the UK. It's a little after 4 in Central European time. Thank you all and good afternoon.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you. Great moderation. Thank you.